Stephan, I'm happy because you're one of the two Stephans, and yesterday we had a meeting for your colleague, and you said, let's have a chat. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing, who you are, and then I have a few questions I would like to get your opinion about.
Yeah, happy to have a chat.
So tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing.
So we're building Mimic Robotics in Switzerland. So we're directly coming out of ETH Zurich. We have we spent about 2 to 3 years at ETH Zurich researching on hands and on the AI topics and all this, and we saw about 2 years ago, we saw that this technology has like quite some applications in industry. That was kind of like, I even remember like one dinner. There was like a bit of a spark, and I was like, okay, fine. Like this is super interesting. Right? We can kind of bring this research into potentially make a company out of this, right? And then exactly, and that's how the whole story kind of developed. Right? And what we do specifically is we build humanoid robotic hands, and we put these humanoid robotic hands on cobot systems or currently existing robotic solutions. To kind of form an entire product, right? And this product can be either stationary or it can be mobile. And it can be single arm or bimanual, so this depends on the customer use case and what they actually need and how much money they want to spend. So it should be very compact or cost effective. And then we combine that hardware with a data collection approach and AI policies that then make the hands actually do some work.
Coming back to that moment where you said, okay, we got something here. Was that because of the maturity of the technology that you guys reached, or was that because you saw that there seems to be a need in the market?
I would say both. Right? We did both. I think the first, it's always like, if you're an engineer, you always like have to kind of like technology push a bit earlier on. So we had this like thing pretty early on where we saw that the whole thing that's happening with language models is going to be applicable for robotics, right? Nice. And that we saw like I don't want to overstate here, but like 2.5 years ago. So I think that's like when this became very clear to most PhDs and people working in that field. And that's what we saw. So we saw the technology is advancing to actually make robots that can interact and flexibly interact with the world possible, right? So this was number one. And number two is we then did a bit of market studies and market understanding, started talking to a few people, and we understood that there is a need for flexible robots in industry and also the home use case. And so bringing that together, we're like, okay, let's start creating a pitch deck.
Nice.
And let's go out to investors and see if we can raise some money.
The other side, the need in the market. This is something I had a talk just before you. We had here the expectation of what is happening, the development of the market, and especially since that moment 2 years ago. I mean, the development is very rapid, right? So how do you guys see that now that you're coming from the university, been doing the research, developing a product out of it, and now hitting the market, talking to a potential customer? What's your opinion on that?
So my personal take is that the technology is currently doing a transition from kind of the proof of concept phase into early deployments. So this is like the current, right now, this is what's happening right now. And we're seeing some very promising results, but I think there's still a bit of flexibility there on, where the technology is actually going. And how far certain approaches, will like, if they will work and what, I would say how fast they will reach a certain technology readiness level. And I think the key question to me is not if this technology is going to reach its potential, but more when. Right? And so, I mean, we can see something similar with like, the car issue, right? Where it was like, there was a huge wave around autonomous cars, right? And it's not that this market didn't exist, right? It took longer than expected. Right? And I think this, like the timeline on when exactly the technology is gonna hit, this like 99% it's doing the correct thing and it's doing this at a very fast pace. This is still a bit of an open question. This will probably take another like 2 or 3 years.
So this is your take on that?
Yeah.
I mean, we have some competitors who are promising some big deployment numbers at the end of this year, and the things that you just said with the why did it take longer for EVs, for example, to be adopted? there's a lot of things that are tied to that, right? So the complexity is a topic.
Right.
Now we're talking about humanoids. Now we're talking about deployments not only in a factory, but let's say at home, but also in the factory. The complexity is still there. So what are the challenges that you guys are facing, and that you see that others are facing as well?
That's a super interesting question, right? Because I think this is like the core of the whole thing. So I believe that the home use case, like even myself, I hate doing laundry, right? And so for me, it would be amazing to have a robot that does the dishes and this whole thing. So I see there's a unbelievable potential there for this type of robot. So I completely see that, and the flip side of that is a humanoid losing power is gonna fall over and potentially fall onto someone, and you got to deal with that problem somehow. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like, that's still in a pretty early stage, and this is gonna take some time, probably also a few years, to get that right. Right? And so I think the potential is unbelievable. It's probably gonna be one of the biggest markets ever, but getting the technology to an actual state where you can safely deploy that at a home case is going to take some time. And to come to us as a company, this is why we are doing industry first. Because with industry, you have more control over the environment. Right? And so we are providing flexible robots, but for a semi-controlled environment. Right? And this gives us a much faster way to approach and to bring this technology into the market quicker. And this is also another reason is why we're only doing the hand, and we're using cobot systems and other robot arms that already are working. They're certified, right? They're already in application in factories, and importantly, customers know about these systems already, right? So they have trust into them, and so this speeds up our deployment a lot. That's what we believe, and so that's also what we've been seeing actually.
Yeah. So the different kind of challenges that are there, you identified those that will, let's say, be the low-hanging fruits, but also the adoption that has been happening in the last few years through the cobot adoption. People know and have a better understanding, expectation, reality, and here diving into that and say, okay, we are not a second mover, but in terms of adoption of new technology, cobots are there, but industrial robots are there. People have trust, they are certified, and now we are building upon that versus coming with something that no one has an idea.
Completely new thing, right? Trying to put that into the most difficult environment ever, which is the human home.
Yeah, crazy.
So it's different approaches.
You said that you guys are been born and coming out of the ETH Zurich. The ecosystem in Zurich, in Switzerland in general, there's a lot of, there's a few robotic companies coming out of that. Yes. We had a few companies raising money, but now that you've been in the US, you've been in China, you know the market, you know the customers, you've been speaking to investors, or investors approaching you guys. So you have a different point of view of all those things. How do you see it? How do you see the ecosystem and where we are?
I think to start off, we were extremely lucky to be in Zurich. Zurich there's different aspects to that question, right? But I think question number one is talent, and talent is unbelievable in Zurich, and even for Switzerland salaries. If you compare that to SF, in SF every good engineer wants to do their own startup. So it's actually hard to build a company with 30 extremely talented and that's the core team of that you're gonna scale the entire company on. It's 10, 15, maybe 20 people, and getting those people right is extremely important. And I think that's actually much easier in Zurich than it is, for example, in some other places like SF. So this is topic number one. Topic number two, of course, there's also some trade-offs we're making here, right? Where I'd say, for example, one thing in Europe is that it's big enterprise customers typically move slower than in the US. So creating the traction and stuff, it takes time, right? That's a bit different than in the US, where in the US, some of them, they almost act like investors to some degree, right? Like the first meeting you have, the questions they ask is much more like investors, like how many people are you, how much money have you raised, right? And the understanding for what you are as a startup and what you bring as value is different there than it is here. And here we have more traditional conversations, I would say. So there is quite a big difference in that sense. And then thirdly, obviously in Zurich, the ecosystem is honestly, it's unbelievable what's it's kind of being created right now. I mean, we recently did a hackathon, right?
Yeah.
And that was very cool to see. It's like everyone coming together, and I felt like almost the ecosystem was like they were asking for that, for these type of things to happen. And it's really like you can feel so many people are walking into robotics, so many new startups coming out of in Zurich right now. And yeah, it's incredible to be part of that ecosystem, honestly. Yeah.
But the challenges when you compare the ecosystems, there's one thing, the mindset, and here you're saying, look, we had the hackathon, there was no problem getting people there, there was no problem talking to other ones. So this is something that doesn't seem to be a problem. But what are the challenges when you compare the different kind of ecosystems? You were talking about the customers, the different size of it, the speedness of it, but what are other things where you think this is something that we do need to speak about, that we do need to address?
Late stage funding. This is a topic that many people know about, many people also talk about. So but yes, what always happens is that there's a lot of early stage investors in Europe. There's a very positive situation that now, right? Like there is a lot that's completely fine, and then when you get into this like mid to late stage 100, 500 million rounds, people go to the US. And it's to some degree a bit sad, right? Because you're building this baseline, the difficult part, kind of like defining the product market fit, defining the product, doing all these things is done here, and then someone buys out the scalability of it. And so this is something that I feel like, I shouldn't talk too long about this, right? But where does the insurance money go into, right? Like all of these, like the big, I think there is like Europe needs some catching up to do, and maybe, but this is the very fundamental question of how our whole society believes in innovation and how they're putting money into that. Right? That there's a bit of a mismatch there.
Thanks for your insight or your perspective here. The variety of component companies and humanoid companies that you see here on the Humanoids Summit, do you have the feeling that this is, because you've been to other fairs as well, do you think that there's such a speed that it's very hard even though for you who are like in that space, do you think it's hard for you guys to catch up, to see what's happening at the moment, or do you think this is great for me because every single new day there's something coming up?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, it's driving us, right? I'm super excited to see what other people are doing. I'm honestly excited about all the money flowing in, right? There's there is a lot of hype around the topic as well, but there's people flowing in, right? I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just moving very quickly, and I personally, I just like these environments that are very quick, right? And every 2 days there's like a new paper, someone's releasing a new data set, and also within our company, right? We talk about this daily, right? It's like there's something new announced, and immediately it's on Slack, and people talk about it, right? And it gets kind of put into action very quickly. So I'm honestly really enjoying it, and obviously from a commercial perspective, right? Like from a company perspective, there is we got to de-risk certain things, right? And so we're building an IP portfolio around combining data collection very much with our hands, and we think we're really becoming one of the leaders in that sector right now. And that's obviously a question of speed, right? There's a lot of things happening in China right now, and also in the US, and we got to compete with that. But I think we're in a good place.
Regarding deployment, because today in the talks I had already, deployment is a big topic, and the different kind of challenges, we were talking about customers earlier on. Is that something that, where you guys think, do you have a specific take on that? Like deployments?
Deployments? Deployments are hard. So, this is nothing new to roboticists, but this is like integration hell. It hits you once when you put the robot together, and then it hits you another time even more when you actually go out into the real world, and it's the simple things. It's like unplugging the thing and plugging it back in, and the thing having to work. Like it's in reality, right? That's what it comes down to, and Ross potentially making some trouble, these types of things is getting that right and getting the technology to a readiness level that you can just go to a customer, you turn it on, and after 2 minutes it's operating. That's the reality. That's what customers want to see. That's what customers are actually also judging you by, right? Like a logistics company, they care about that the task gets done. So their expectation is that the robot shows up and you turn it on and it does something, right? And getting to that level, that's not easy. And I think a lot of people underestimate what that takes. Also, it was a learning experience now for us, and I think the way we did it is that we started with more local, smaller deployments that gave us understanding and gave us, I think, it was local is better from speed perspective, and it gave us a lot of experience now on how to do these things.
We had a panel today with a few people, and over the course of the last 2 days, I had a few guests here that are also working on hands. And the idea and the question is, okay, why this is one of the most complex and most hardest topics to solve. And you guys coming from the research side here, so maybe you would like to give us a bit more an idea how you guys are doing things differently.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, I guess the first question to answer here is like, why the hand? And, so we're also seeing 3-finger grippers, 2-finger grippers. There's like Aloha. There's UMI. There's a lot of interesting. I think today there was an argument made, which I think is also very interesting, is that people, amputees that are using a hook are actually extremely good at doing a lot of different tasks, right? And so there's a certain question about what embodiment is the best.
Yeah.
And our answer to that is not that the hand is necessarily the best at doing a certain thing, but the whole story here is data. And where are we getting the data from? And we believe that the human has 5 fingers and a hand. And we can base, this is the scalable data source that we have, right? In all of these logistics factories and assembly factories, there's all people doing the jobs, right?
Yeah.
We can make videos of that. We can use glove data of the people doing that job, and we can also use teleoperation. We can stack all of these data sources on top of each other to actually solve these tasks. And that works the best if your robot is as similar as possible to the data source. So that's why the hand, right?
Yeah.
And then the question of like what is specific about our hand, right? So we are building a hand that is made for industry. So this is, for example, it's not necessarily, it's quite power hungry because it's it can be plugged in, right? But it's very strong. Right? So we're making certain trade-offs here that, for example, mobile system or certain other systems don't have to do. Our system is relatively lightweight because it has to fit on cobots. So the system has about 1 kilogram. So there's a certain, we're building very specifically for this use case where we put a hand onto a cobot. And yeah, exactly. So it's fulfilling these roles, and then it's a very high degree of freedom system, so it can match the data as good as possible.
So here you have the advantage because you are so close to the real hand, so you mimic the movement of the hand.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What I always do is asking what's next for you guys, because I do see that as we talked before, everything is moving so fast, right? But you do have a roadmap, you do have an idea what's happening towards the end of the year. And I mean, maybe we have here the opportunity to have a look at that. Maybe you would like to give us a little bit sneak peek?
I think we can share a few things. We're very actively now working on the first deployments. Right? So working together with industrial clients to actually bring this technology into factory halls. And this is really something that's coming up, that we're doing starting right now and we'll do until the end of the year.
Exciting.
Yeah? And also our next generation hands are going to come out very soon, right? Nice. For those industry customers, and those going to bring much more like very high reliability, also ease of use. These types of topics are really important and something we're tackling right now.
So you're very close to the customer to really being able to fill this back into the research that is the company is built upon on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I heard over the last few days. There's those who are standing very close to the problem, very close to the actually customer, they do better.
Like, to me, it's like coming, I mean, I'm a techie at the heart, but there's so many aspects. It's such a complex system. Like, you have the drivetrain, right? You have all these sensors, you have, it's a very complex product. And all the engineering decisions need to be driven by some type of customer argument. And this is very, very important for us, right? And so where do you put the sensors? Where do you make sense, right? How expensive are they? Like, all of this, how fast does the robot have to be, right? These things, and there's certain things you have to put into place and certain decisions you have to already make at the bottom level, like on the control system side, for example, to make all of these things possible. But all of these decisions have to be driven by the use cases. This is our...
There's a few things coming up. You just mentioned them, but at the moment we don't see any. We don't see any big announcement. It seems like a lot of people are really close to. We would like to deliver first, and then being loud. Is that something that is close to you guys?
I think that's something we're definitely gonna do.
Because just before you, I had I had someone from a market research institute, and we were talking about numbers, for example, and then we were talking about the challenges that humanoid companies or component companies are facing at, and then the problem market size. And then the question was, what are the things that a company can do to do better in the future? And one of the things he was mentioning was your approach in terms of like being close to the customer,
right,
and being not only honest but being very let's say reserved and pragmatic about what you can deliver, and those companies have the higher probability of delivering.
I think there's a balance to be made between, you know, when you work very closely with customers, usually it comes with NDAs and you're not able to show the use case and stuff, and then we replicate it and, you know, this sort of things. So there's a bit of a balance there, but for us, there's a huge amount of customer education that we have to do, and that takes time to have the people understand what this new technology can do. And that is something that that's something we're very, actively doing right now, and trying to kind of get the customers to a point where they understand, okay, the technology is much more flexible, right? I can do much more things with that. I can potentially bring this into an environment that the human was working in before, and have the robot help the human there.
So really increasing the degree of automation in places that was impossible before.
Yeah, for work that is dull, repetitive, very annoying, dangerous.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's coming out of that. I'm curious to see how you guys doing. I mean, I am from Europe, so I do like the feeling and seeing the different kind of companies popping up, hackathons popping up. Just saw your hackathon. It was pretty impressive and successful.
Thanks.
People are speaking about this, so looking forward to see the next one.
Cool. Thank you very much
thanks
for
taking
having me.
the time, and we talk in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Eddie.